Hi there, welcome to Grain TV. It's Thursday, February 16th, and a down day in the markets. Let's take a look at GrainEdge's platform and see where we closed. In Chicago, corn giving up 5.5 cents on front month March. Beans losing 18 cents a bushel, giving up yesterday's 16-cent advance and then some. And wheat in Chicago off 9.25. Really, today felt like a give back day after yesterday's strong move and some recent gains here of late in beans. In particular, we touched on the close yesterday at 10.34 on the upside on the November contract. Today we just sort of gave up that 10.34 mark before moving down, closing at the low on November around 10.24 and a half. News today, let's start first off with the weather situation in South America. It continues to oscillate between dry and wet, and the overall picture continues to be positive. Brazil is expected to see some drying situations in the areas where they're trying to harvest and get second season safrinha crop planted. In Argentina, they're expected to get some rain where it's been dry. So overall, the mix between hot and dry and wet and cool has really sort of led to pretty mild growing conditions and the potential for a big crop. Today, Landworth, private forecaster out of Thomson Reuters, suggested that they are pegging the Brazilian bean crop at 106 million metric tons versus their previous estimate of 104. USDA has stayed firm at 104 on Brazilian beans, even though most analysts are moving higher as the weather continues to be favorable. Other news coming in late on the close, we had some news that Mexico's ag minister is going to be visiting Argentina and Brazil with companies from Mexico to discuss trade situations in corn. In particular, there's been some saber rattling going on the last few days. A state senator in Mexico said he would propose legislation to eliminate or to encourage more corn out of South America instead of the U.S. And today we get this piece of news that Mexico's ag minister is going to make a concerted effort by visiting those countries to discuss ways to increase imports of Argentina and Brazilian corn into Mexico. So that is problematic and systematic of what could be a negative problem on the demand side for corn, and in addition for beans, because Mexico is also a big bean buyer as well, but more so in the case of corn. Speaking of demand and exports, let's look at today's export sales announcement that came from USDA this morning. The numbers were pretty good. In wheat in particular, we came in above expectations, 569,000 for old crop versus 300 to 500 expected, only 20,000 metric tons of new crop deals. Corn was a little disappointing on the old crop, coming in a little bit light at 784, but we had a really good new crop number at 285. And beans doing a very respectable number for this time of year, 890 on old crop and 207 on new crop, although China was only buying about 200,000 of that 890,000 metric tons in soybeans. Speaking of China, what happens when we see China increase their exports in the second half of the marketing year? And in particular, starting from February and looking to August, what are the situations we see when we see China buying a lot more U.S. beans? And in particular, what I've done is look at the last 5 years on this table showing China soy imports. On the far right, you'll see years of fairly large imports in 2012 and last year 2016. Last year 2016, China bought U.S. beans to the tune of 3.3 million metric tons, and in 2012 they bought 5.6 million metric tons. What you'll notice about those 2 years compared to the other years is that China's commitments with the U.S. were pretty low relative to where they normally are compared to forecasts. So on average, in those 2 years, they were around 31% committed relative to their overall needs in terms of imports. What you see this year is they stand at 39% of the 86 million metric tons that they are expected to import. So that's at the other end of the spectrum, which leads me to think that they're probably going to be a very limited buyer for U.S. beans. And when you add into that the situation in South America, that looks to be very promising in terms of a sizable crop coming off of Brazil right now. And then, of course, later in the season, we'll get Argentina's crop coming their way. So overall, overall, I would not expect to see China entering the market, especially like they did last year where they bought a sizable amount of beans in the later half of the marketing year. That seems highly unlikely given the fact they're already well committed and we're going to see stiff competition from South America going forward. Speaking of beans, let's take a look at the November bean chart. We've been focusing in on that because we've been trading up against that 1034 mark, and we traded up to it yesterday, settling around that 1034 mark before today, really just sort of getting hammered down in the day session, closing down around 1024. So I know a lot of farmers are sort of sitting on the fence right now waiting for some sort of decisive action, and it may be coming soon. We're sort of driving this market into a wedge. We've been in this long-term uptrending support line started on July 29th. We're getting close to that at 10:08, and so a breakdown below that would probably lead to some technical selling from the funds who have been plying it on long here as of late. So watch this market closely. I think it's going to maybe take some turns if we get some downside potential here in the coming days. That's all we've got for today on Grain TV. As always, if you'd like to learn more, visit us online at grainhedge.com. Take a demo of our trading platform. See all the services you get for only $7 a trade. Have a great day. We'll talk to you on Friday.